Hello, I'm David Hunt, and welcome to The Art Hunter. My guest today is an actor, singer, radio host, writer, marriage celebrant. You know, like he cleans toilets on weekends as well. Originally from Perth, he studied there as well, and we will talk about that a little bit. He has starred in some of the biggest musicals: School of Rock, Cats, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, Rocky Horror, Wicked, just to name a few. And he wrote and produced his own cabaret show, #Vow. Got to talk about that. Great show, great premise, which toured Australia and was included in the Adelaide Cabaret Festival. John O'Hara, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's my pleasure. You've done a lot.
I know.
That's because you're really old.
I know. I just turned 43.
Hey, well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
So where did it start? You studied in Perth, and what's the uni there that you studied? Whopper. Yeah. Very famous, especially for musical theatre.
Yeah.
Where did the urge come from, or were you always a show off as a little kid?
I was actually a very shy kid because I was a very overweight kid, and so I was obviously different to the other kids, and so I just didn't know that at the time. So I think the interest came from, watching old musicals and disappearing into the fantasy of it all. And then as I got older, I figured out that you could do that for a job.
And so, were you in productions at school? Did you do
I went
all
to
of
a
that?
performing arts college.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, in Perth, called the John Curtin College of the Arts, and I was on a theatre scholarship. They had different scholarships, but mine was a theatre one. So that was my real proper formal introduction to it. But in terms of musical theatre, they only ever did a musical once every 2 years.
Oh,
yeah. So
why?
I think because they're just big and expensive, and big casts, and so we did Oliver when I was in year 9 or something, and I was one of the pickpockets and stuff, and I fell in love with the art form, and then we did.
And what a great show anyway, Oliver. Oh, the
incredible.
music in Oliver is amazing.
And Sam Worthington, that Hollywood actor, he was in that production. Because he went to the school. So this is before he went off to NIDA after that, but he was their big kind of export at the time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And then you ended up at uni doing musical theatre at Whopper.
Yeah. So when I was in year 12, we did Fiddler on the Roof at school, and my teachers were very supportive. And I say this a lot now because I don't think if I had been surrounded by the teachers and tutors and stuff that I had at the time in Perth, that I necessarily would have been guided the way that I was. And it was very kind of them and very kind of curated of them in a way. And so they pushed me towards Whopper because I wanted to go to NIDA.
Oh.
But they said, you've got a voice, you can sing, you should explore this more. And so that's kind of how it started. But I didn't get into Whopper when I first auditioned. It took me a couple of times, which it does take a couple of times in some cases. Yeah.
Did you work out why, down the track? Or
why I didn't get in?
Yeah.
I just wasn't ready. I think to go to Whopper in the musical theatre course, you have to be of a certain standard. You don't really go there to learn to sing or learn to act. You have to be of a certain standard, and then they work with you.
So same with NIDA, I suppose.
Yeah, same with NIDA. So I had to do some work on my own, which I did, and also that kind of life experience. They want you to have, lived a bit, gotten a bit naughty and loose, and all of that stuff. I think so you can
have a better understanding of roles. Yeah.
Yeah.
So why the big move over to this side of the country? Lack of work, I suppose.
Well, back then, this is going back 21 years ago. I graduated. There just was no industry in Perth, and it was a given that everyone went to Perth, studied. It's still that way. There's only 2 or 3 or 4 West Australians in any given year at Whopper, and then the rest kind of are made up from people around the country because it's that well regarded. And then at the end of the course, all of the courses there, you go on what's called the Showcase Tour, where they bring you to Melbourne and to Sydney. And I mean, this was all pre-pandemic, obviously. The last couple of years, they haven't been able to do it. But you would do, sing a song and do a scene and in the hope that an agent would pick you up. So I went on my Showcase tour and was luckily offered a very good agent who said, I'll represent you, but you need to come to either Melbourne or Sydney. And I did. I kind of rocked up with $1,500 and 2 suitcases and rented a room. It was so cheap back then, like $75 for this room in this share house in Windsor in Melbourne, and that's where it all began. Started auditioning and did all that stuff.
Same agent?
I just recently left this agent, only because it had been so long and we had become such close friends. But that's what the relationship had turned into. So I've moved to a different agency and still very much in contact with my old agent, but love my new agent too.
Oh, okay. So like, it was just time to move on. Was that?
Yeah, relationships come to a kind of end, and I feel like we'd done what we could, all that we could do, and I needed a fresh injection of interest in me, and I had that conversation, and we kind of just left. And I saw them the other night at Hamilton opening night, and we had a big hug and COVID safe kiss, and that was that.
Fantastic. So what was the big break, your first big musical theatre break?
My first big professional job was with the production company that now no longer exists, but they were staging Hair at the old Melbourne Concert Hall, and David Atkins was directing it, and Jason Coleman was choreographing it. And I got into it. I'd auditioned for David a couple of months prior, because I got very close to a couple of things, and I'd auditioned for David a couple of months prior because they were touring Fame. And he said to me, I think you're great, but you're not right for this show. So I look forward to seeing you, and I'm going to do Hair in a few months. And so I went in and went through this very rigorous audition and got it. And that was the beginning of it all. And it was the best way to start because, as you know, Hair is a show about tribe and about community and young people kind of...
Taking your clothes off?
Yeah, taking their clothes off and fighting for the good fight and stuff. So some of those people are still my closest friends. But yes, and we took our clothes off. It was a sexy time.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is the production company is Melbourne based, and they did 3 or 4 shows a year, short runs, but gave actors a great opportunity to be in a musical that you normally wouldn't get a chance to be in.
In the time that I graduated, they were, responsible for launching most careers in musical theatre, and I know that's a big call, but it's actually the truth. We were given the opportunity to work with professional creatives in a professional environment, and as you say, it was fast. Back in those days as well, I think it was a 10-day rehearsal period and then maybe 5 shows, and then it kind of extended out as the years went on and the company got more successful. So then to go in and do the big kind of long running tour that I did first was Shout, the Johnny O'Keefe show, which was not so long after Hair. But we had 4 weeks rehearsal for that. And I kind of thought, oh wow, 4 weeks rehearsal. We did Hair in 10 days, So it really set up a generation of young musical theatre performers for all of the good things that were to come to them.
A shame it's gone, but it couldn't last, for reasons we'll talk about at another time maybe. But a shame it's not there for the new people coming through.
And for the performing arts landscape in Melbourne, because it became a real pinnacle of the industry here. So I hope that at some point it can reinvent itself in another form.
Yeah, but it's the cost.
Yes.
The cost. Yeah. Okay, so how did you end up overseas doing shows, like Priscilla, Cats?
Well,
what
your
happened?
Agent just kind of sends you the brief. I think as musical theatre performers, we're very well regarded on a global level. And so in the case of Cats and Priscilla, the brief just comes through to the agency and then they kind of call you and say, hey, are you interested in auditioning for this Asian tour of Cats or the cruise ship version of Priscilla? And you go in and audition and and then you're on a plane. You know, it all happens so fast. You kind of wait for these jobs, and then when they happen, it's like you've auditioned, you've got the job, you've got your visa, and you're on a plane within 2 weeks. You know?
Yeah. And you just hinted, but it was on a cruise ship, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, out of America.
Yeah.
This Australian little play that was a movie to begin with. Is universally known.
Yeah, I don't think as Australians we know just how successful the franchise of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert is. And, you know, the musical was very successful here. Then it was very successful on the West End. Then Bette Midler co-produced it on Broadway. And then Norwegian creative studios picked it up, and they have a fleet of floating city ships. It's bananas. You can't quite believe it until you're on these ships. And so they have a whole catalogue of shows that they do, but one of the new ones at that time a few years ago was Priscilla, and so they wanted Australian accents in the principal roles. And so I just went and auditioned, and the phone call was funny. You know, Priscilla's going on a cruise ship out of America and then Europe for 7 months. It'll be the full production with all the bells and whistles. Whoa. The bus on a revolve, the girls flying in over the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And I just kind of thought, how is this going to translate to American audiences? And then, you know, largely Asian audiences as well, and European audiences that come on these big ships out of Florida and Barcelona and stuff. But I went in and auditioned, I got the job, and off I went. And the thing that I learned really quickly is that Priscilla has had such an impact around the world. It's one of those movies that has this kind of cult following, you know. And I think as a queer story, it's really exciting and important that it's an Australian story, and so many people see themselves in those three very archetypal and different characters. So it was a bananas time away, but it was beautiful.
And you did it the whole time?
Yeah. I did it for 7 months.
7 months, wow.
So we spent the first few months down in the Caribbean, out of Florida, back and forth kind of every week. And then we did the transatlantic cross up to the Mediterranean, which takes 12 days, which was weird because there's no one on the ship. And it's just the crew. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This kind of skeleton. There's a couple of passengers, but not really, because no one wants to do the trip up.
Why?
It's 12 days and there's nothing to do. You stop
apart from watch Priscilla.
Yeah. Well, we only did the show 3 times in 12 days because, you know, there wasn't many people on board. And you stop in Bermuda.
Right.
Which I naturally thought we were going to disappear because we were in Bermuda. And then you go up to Barcelona, and we were based out of Barcelona, and we would do Livorno out of Italy, Civitavecchia out of Italy, Cannes out of France, and then a few other places in Spain. I can't remember the names of the ports. Yeah.
Cats.
Yeah. This is a show everyone loves to hate, but it's really good to be in.
I walked out at interval.
What about the film? Have you seen the film?
I wouldn't even dare go near the film.
It's terrible. Yeah. I did Cats for 3 years.
Whoa.
I joined for 9 months and stayed for 3 years. Yeah, it was my first big. I joined as an understudy, and I was given the opportunity to step into one of the lead roles, Rum Tum Tugger, about 9 months in, and so I stayed, and we toured Thailand, China, South Korea, South Africa, the whole of Australia, New Zealand. We went everywhere, and it was again just a really cool experience. Weird show, but especially in Asia and particularly in South Korea, the show is so popular. At one point when we were there were 2 productions of the show running at the same time. One a Korean speaking production, and one an English speaking production.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Now I've got to tell the story because I love it. We were on radio together on Sunday Arts Magazine on Joy 94.9. And you were grizzling like crazy because you were going to audition after audition, and you went and you thought, I'm giving up being an actor. You know, this is it. I'm at the end of the road. And then all of a sudden you get this call, and you're actually part of this show that Andrew Lloyd Webber was producing and gave the nod for you for this particular part.
Yeah. And
here you are in School of Rock.
Yeah, so that was big because, as you say, I hadn't worked in a little while, Life of an Actor. and I went in and auditioned for School of Rock, and one thing led to another, and I was cast in the role of Ned Schneebly, which is the Jack Black role's best friend, and who he pretends to be for a big bunch of the show. And because it was a new show in Australia, and we were the original cast, Andrew Lloyd Webber, which he does with all of his shows, he signs off on the principal lineup. So the final audition happened, and we were taped, and then you told that the tapes are off to the Lord in London, and and then I got the phone call that Andrew Lloyd Webber had invited me to join the company, and you get a little kind of email letter thing that he's
from him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're like, that's good on your resume.
Yeah, it's exciting. He was meant to come out for opening, but he didn't, and his wife did. But she's gorgeous.
Yeah. So here you are rehearsing for it, and you injure yourself before the show gets off the ground.
Yes. Well, this picture behind us.
Yep.
On that very couch, which was on an automated machine that came forward and locked into position, and then Brent and I jumped around that couch with our guitars, and in final rehearsals the couch hadn't locked properly, and it went out from underneath me as I jumped up. Ooh. And I spun in the air, and in an attempt to, because we were always told these guitars are very expensive, which they are, save the guitar. So in an attempt to save the guitar, I broke my right knee, which needed a full reconstruction on it. So I actually missed the opening of the show. Yeah, so I was out for 3 months. I was told it would take 9, but I found this magician surgeon and magician physio, and they had me back in 3 months.
But the wonderful thing is they stuck by you.
Oh, it was a heartbreaking time, but I will never forget being pulled into the production office, because there were lots of people that had come out from Andrew Lloyd Webber's office in London, and I was sat down and we discussed what was going to happen, that I was going to need surgery, and it needed to be done, sooner rather than later, because when you've got a broken knee, you can do cartilage damage, and once you've done cartilage damage, it doesn't grow back. So they needed to do it, and so it was decided it was going to be done within the week, and they had an opening for me, but all of Andrew Lloyd Webber's execs and stuff said to me, this is your role, you auditioned for it, you earned it, we will be here for you when you get back. And our Australian producers as well. And so it was completely covered. I always like to say publicly that I was so well looked after. And if I had to pay for that on my own, I just wouldn't have been able to afford it. And they looked after me with the best hospitals, the best physiotherapists, but even just, a Coles online delivery for a few weeks, because I couldn't walk for a couple of weeks. I was very, very well looked after. Yeah.
And then you came back in for the last couple of weeks here in Melbourne.
The last week.
Last week, yeah. And then off you went to China.
Off we went to China, yeah. We did it, we did China, and then we came back and did the Australian National Tour, yeah. So we had our tour, a touring production is big anyway, but when you have 3 sets of 12 children, plus their parents, and sometimes their siblings, plus an entire adult cast and an entire crew of wardrobe and lights and sound. We were a touring company of like 120 people through 5 cities, I think it was, in China, all pre-COVID as well. So it's weird to look back on, because it was literally the year before COVID happened. Yeah. And
then you get back to Australia eventually. And it stops because of COVID.
Yeah, we were in Sydney, and we finished Sydney, and we were supposed to go to Adelaide, and so we did our final show. And I remember there were whispers about COVID, and I was on one of the trams in Sydney, the new trams, and people were coughing and kind of looking at each other. And I remember getting to the theatre going like, everyone's being so weird about this COVID thing, And then and someone just looked at me funny when I coughed on the tram, and then we finished in Sydney, and we were meant to be in Adelaide in 10 days, and we never got there. So the show never finished officially. It's very weird when you see, especially the kids. Like, I just did Tommy for the Vic Opera, and some of the kids came to see the show, and they've grown up a bit, but we never had that kind of closure with them. And when they come and say, hey, you know, remember me, you know, think, oh my goodness, we never got to say goodbye. And it feels unfinished.
And how do you feel as an actor when all of a sudden a show like that is cut? You know, it was happening with everything, of course, but you know, the emotions would have been you would have been really quite upset about it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, we had months to go on it, and those big shows, you know, you save money and stuff. It was a really tough time to watch and be a part of the downfall of the arts industry. It's hard to explain, I think, to people that aren't a part of it, just how decimated and how instant it was. I had that show, but then I had 3 or 4 other little festivals and stuff in the months after that show, and all in the space of 3 days. It was just phone call, email, cancelled, and all of a sudden you just have no income. Because, you know, as artists, we work in the gig economy, and it was a scary time, you know, a really, really, really scary time. I'm going to change a little bit here and go to Cabaret, which you've done a little bit over time. Then all of a sudden you write your own cabaret show. What was it called? Oh, this one was called #Val, a campfire kiki with mother.
Right. And Val is your mum?
She's my mum, yep.
Right. And it's about mothers, your mum and mothers of the world.
Yeah, particularly the mothers of the queer community. It was written as a kind of rebuttal to the discussion that was being had around the marriage plebiscite. And I think it was a really hurtful time for lots of people. And as a creative person, I just honed my energy into expressing that. And one of the things that became really evident to me during that time was that if you're lucky enough to have a mum like my mum, she becomes a mum for a mother figure for lots of different people. But then wider than that, I think as a queer person, and sometimes we choose our own family, mother figures within our community are so important, and they can take on, you know, the shape of many different forms. You know, they don't necessarily have to be a biological woman who is your mother. You know. And to it, and more importantly, you were part of the Adelaide Cabaret Festival, the very prestigious Adelaide Cabaret Festival. Again, you know, like all of a sudden your resume is looking unbelievably strong. That was really cool, because, you know, the Adelaide Cabaret Festival, as you say, is the pinnacle of cabaret in Australia, and it's one of the big festivals in the world. You know? And I'd heard whispers that Alan Cumming was going to be the AD for 2020, and he's just, you know, in my top 3 in terms of artistic icon mentors and inspirations. And he can't be a mentor. I don't know him very well. He's a mentor now. And I thought, you know what? I think this will be Alan's flavour. My show will be Alan's flavour. So you go through this submission process. And I was lucky because I'd done the show a fair few places and it had been successful. So I had that behind me. And he picked it. And then you kind of think, well, someone as big and as famous as Alan Cumming, like, is he going to be present? Is he really going to know who you are? And the answer is absolutely yes. You know, he was so supportive and so kind and giving, and he invited me to sing. I was guesting at Bob Downes' show, and he was there, and he then invited me to guest at his show that night, and you know, we partied away, and he you know, I would feel comfortable kind of contacting him if I went to New York. He was really a part of it all, and I saw him perform, and he's just brilliant. And the Adelaide Cabaret Festival, you know, Tina Arena is the AD this year, is just the most magical festival. Have you ever been?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I just love it. Yeah. It's just incredible.
But during COVID and Perth being isolated, you went there a couple of times and stayed there for a fair while and did a fair bit of cabaret and theatre. You even directed. I did.
For the first time, I've directed, which is a step that, you know, I'd wanted to take, but I was a bit scared to take. So I did 2 things over there. I directed the big Christmas spectacular for Crown Casino there, which was, you know, it's a very specific kind of variety show, but on a big scale. And that led to me being invited to direct a production of Legally Blonde over there, which nearly killed me, but I'm so proud of it. Yeah, I mean, directing it's so all-encompassing, because when you're performing, it's just you, and you just have to worry about your part, you know. But directing is everything, and you have to lead, and people, you know, if people don't trust you, you're cooked. You know, I learned that really quickly. But I was really proud of what we did. Yeah,
fantastic. And just recently, you were down in Tassie for Rocky Horror.
Yes.
Who did you play?
I got to play Frankenfurter.
Whoa, there you are.
Yeah. It was my dream. That's my dream role. So, same thing. The brief came through my agent, and you know, traditionally they cast a celebrity in that role, and it was on the list. Sometimes if a celebrity's been cast, it just won't be on the list of characters, but it was on the list, and I started the process. And same thing with Rocky Horror, the tapes have to go to London because Richard O'Brien nods off on his Frankenfurter, and I got it. So I went down and did it. It was the first time the show's been in Tassie in 40 years. It's the first locally produced professional musical on a commercial level in Tassie. So it was a lot of firsts for Tassie and Hobart, and it just extended and extended and extended, and it was half mainland cast. Tasmanians call us mainlanders. Half mainland cast and half Taswegians, and it was a really special, beautiful time.
So here you go, you're along this journey now, and you've achieved so much, John. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You've done them in some weird and wonderful places.
I know. I've toured. I have toured. I remember thinking, it's that thing of be careful what you wish for. I remember seeing, you know, a production of Chicago when Sharon Millerchip and Chelsea Gibb were playing Velma and Roxy back in the late 90s, and they'd been to Hong Kong on tour or something, and thinking, wow, if you got to tour a musical overseas, that must mean you've made it, you know. And I sometimes think, I think I wished for it so hard that, you know, that's why it happened.
Yeah.
But, I've been very, very fortunate.
But then it's that continuous thing of there's the next auditions you've got to go to, that process you've got to go through. It's a little bit soul destroying, I should imagine it would be like.
Well, you just get a little bit desensitized to it. And I think the more you do, you know, like doing something like #Val and Frankenfurter, it's not about necessarily not being good enough to be in the show that you're auditioning for. It's just about them putting together the jigsaw puzzle. So you get better at taking it on the chin, you know, but I don't think people realize how many no's we get in comparison to how many yeses we get. I was saying to you before we started filming, you know, it's really quiet for me at the moment. And that's okay for a little while, but then I'll start to get antsy.
Yeah. But you've got to, stick to your guns, stay there. Let's stay focused on it. And it's hard to do when it's it's so different to a normal person's job, isn't it? It's so different. Everyone needs to see a chorus line to have an understanding of how tough it is for a musical theatre person.
Yeah.
And now you've diverted a bit. You do a bit of radio, but you're also doing these reports now. Like traffic reports for an income.
Yeah. So I think most people have a little side hustle. You just kind of have to, because cash flow is important. You know, we don't like to say that money, it's not the be all and the end all, but we definitely need it. And I love the radio, and I love doing my traffic and weather announcing and stuff for the other stations I do it for. I think it's a really cool skill and a really cool industry, radio, because there's so many skills that I can use that I already have, but then there's heaps of new ones that I still have to learn. Yeah.
Do you actually sometimes put yourself in a situation, I'll play it this way today, or you've got to play it?
Oh, I constantly get noted for being a little theatrical with my, like, it's just the traffic. You don't need to kind of sell it. They just want the information. But you know, I always always try to smile through my traffic because you don't want someone going, it's, Hoddle Street is this and the Eastern Freeway is this.
As it always is. Why even report on Hoddle Street, because we all know what it's going to be like.
Yeah, no, we don't even mention Punt Road because it's always the way it is.
That's the way it is. John O'Hara, thank you so much for chatting with me today, and congratulations on your brilliant career.
Thank you for having me.
I'm David Hunt, and you've been watching The Art Hunter, and we'll be back again real soon.